It's 1:30. I'd like to get the August 20th, 2018 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. We'll have roll call. Commissioner Clare. He is not available. Commissioner Littlefield.
Present.
Commissioner White. Not available. Commissioner Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner George.
Here.
And Commissioner Milner.
Here.
Okay, we do have one little change to the agenda items. The mayor has stopped by to say hey, so I'd like to introduce Mayor Holt to everybody.
Thank you. Just a citizen to be heard. I just wanted to come by. I've tried to make a point of making the rounds with some of the more critical commissions that we have, and sorry it took me 3 months, but I just like to come by and say hi, let you know I know that you exist, and it's not lost on me how much time you put into this volunteer effort. You're still volunteers, right? They haven't started paying you yet? No, I didn't think so. So just thank you for your service, and I look forward to working with each of you as in the years ahead, and appreciate all that you do. That's all I needed. You may now proceed with your extremely timely schedule, Mr. Kula.
Yes, sir, on time. In fact, we're in session. There you go. We got the mayor's gavel here, so put it to use.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Okay, we'll go on now to the approval of the minutes of the July 16, 2018 meeting, please. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Hale.
Second.
And we have a second by Commissioner George. Any discussion on the minutes from July 16th? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner George to approve the minutes from July 16th, 2018. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. Report on license and taxi record service will be presented in October. Do we have a motion concerning the consent docket? Item 4A and B. Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent docket from Commissioner Miller. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Milner. Okay, before we proceed on, do we have anybody who wants to speak against an item on the consent docket? 4A or 4B? Okay, staff, do you have anything to add to the consent docket?
No, we no further comments.
Okay. Okay, any talk about the consent docket? All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Milner, to approve the consent docket. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. We are now to item 5A, Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority. Consider a recommendation to the Oklahoma City Council on sections relating to motor vehicles and traffic of an ordinance relating to miscellaneous provisions and offenses, motor vehicles and traffic, noise, and the general schedule of fees of the Oklahoma City Code 2010, and amended all those sections that are listed in the agenda. Do you have anybody here to speak on item 5A? Yes, sir. If I could have your name, address, you have up to 5 minutes.
Sure. Name is Jesse Rush, streetcar manager for Embark. Address is 406 Southwest 7th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73109.
And if I could have you fill one of these out afterwards, please.
You bet. Sure,
Thank
no
you.
problem. So just quick introduction, an overview of what we're doing here. So first, we tried to make the longest memo subject possible. Looks like we achieved that. So we've been working with Stuart and the captain here and the police department to get some of these ordinances in place. I don't know if you're aware the streetcar is being built, in case you have any trouble getting around downtown. Not all my fault, but most of it is. So we've been working on these ordinances to get them in place so that essentially, basically updating ordinances to bring the streetcar into service, right? So, adding streetcar definition to our ordinances, so for instance, on Joe Carter, we've got some striping that we needed to make sure that our ordinances cover that striping because it's streetcar specific. So that's what these ordinances are, just bringing ordinances up to date and making them include streetcar information. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Remember the form, please. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5A? Okay, staff, do you have anything?
No, I really don't have anything further to add. Mr. Rush kind of gave you a a brief summary of what's being included. I can just run you through on the individual items. In Section 32 is being amended in several locations. One is to add the definition of a streetcar. They're adding definitions for the very specific streetcar traffic signal control displays, because along the route you'll see that there will be new signal heads that are installed that will have a white bar on them. It'll be set horizontally, at a diagonal, and then vertically. And these traffic control signals are defining meanings for streetcar operators. This is when they can enter an intersection or when to hold them, keep them from entering. There's items that address, the Public Works Department having the authority to make decisions and to stripe as necessary along the route. And a few other things that are added. I think that most everything in here is pretty much straightforward. There was one amendment that was done last month, and that was with regard to parking and staying inside the striped lines to make sure there isn't any interference between parked vehicles and the streetcar. So I imagine there will probably be other items added as they work towards getting the streetcar operational. But this is the Commission's getting the opportunity to make a review and recommendation to the City Council on an ordinance, just looking at the pieces in Chapter 32 at this point in time. There are other divisions in here, in other sections, but Embark will be taking those on to City Council once the Traffic Commission has weighed in on the Chapter 32 component. So if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay. Do we have a motion concerning item 5A?
Mr. Chairman, I move it be approved.
Okay. We have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hale. Any discussion on item 5A? Okay. We have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Hale. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Thank you for your help. Okay, we go on now to item 5B, Timothy W. Johnson, P.E., Johnson & Associates, Inc., to consider a request to, 1, change the speed limit on North Chautel Avenue between Northwest 13th Street and Northwest 23rd Street from 30 miles per hour to 25. 2, change the speed limit on North Robinson Avenue between Northwest 13th Street and Northwest 23rd Street from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. And 3, change the speed limit on North Broadway Avenue between Northwest 13th Street and Northwest 23rd Street from 30 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. Hello, sir. If I could have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. Tim Johnson, 1 East Sheridan, Suite 200, Oklahoma City. I'm with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the applicants, and along with me today is Bill Carey from Heritage Hills neighborhood. As you'll recall, we've been here several times adding stop signs through the neighborhood and doing other traffic-related work as part of a program that was started by a very exhaustive study that was prepared by traffic engineering consultants a number of years ago. So as part of the implementation of this, we've come at you in steps. Some of that was at the request of Public Works Director not to dump so many changes on the neighborhood at one time. So what you have before you today is the request to change the speed limits on the 3 streets that you've identified, raising Broadway because we want it to be the collector, and lowering the other 2 streets within the neighborhoods, Mesta Park and Heritage Hills, to be more in compliance with the residential speed limit. One fact that we found in doing our research for this is that through FHWA, the risk of death at even 5 miles an hour goes up 3 and 4 times. And what this image shows you is the view perspective of the driver as they're driving at different speeds as they encounter a person at a crosswalk or whatever. So I thought this was an interesting fact. I know that one of the analysis done by the staff indicates that people are pretty much driving that speed limit anyway. Why change it? Well, we think that by posting it and by adding the stop signs that we have, it just gives a little more teeth to the reinforcing and enforcement of the speed. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5B? Okay, staff input, please.
All right, you've got comments before you. I just want to draw your attention to a point that Mr. Johnson made during his presentation. On page 4 of your report, you'll see that there's a table entitled Speed Studies, and as part of our study, as part of our evaluation of this particular request, we went and observed traffic speeds on Chartel, Robinson, and Broadway. In the first column of this study, you'll note that as far as driver compliance with the currently posted speed limits, which on Chartel and Robinson, which stand at 30 miles right now, you're getting compliance of about 94% on Chartel and 88% on Robinson. On Broadway, it's down around 32%, and it's because most people are traveling higher than that. If you look at making change, the second column over, if you change to the requested speed limits, so in the case of Chartel and Robinson, it'd be going from 30 to 25, you'd be looking at compliance dropping to about 62%. That's currently what people are doing. And then about 56% of drivers on Robinson are doing 25 or less. You notice that on Broadway, though, it takes a step up because people have a tendency to be traveling faster on Broadway, but then it's like a 5-lane roadway. We ran there a Bella Light credible speed analysis on these roadways. We found out that based on how the area is developed, the general appearance of the roadway corridors, that drivers are pretty much driving speeds that they believe to be most appropriate given the traffic controls in place. So at this time, staff can support and recommends the use of the requested 35-mile-an-hour speed limit on Broadway between Northwest 13th and 23rd Street, as it closely mirrors observed driver behavior and is appropriate given the manner in which the roadway was constructed. Chartel Avenue is a consistently posted 30-mile limit from West Reno to Northwest 36th Street, and likewise Robinson has a consistently posted 30-mile-an-hour limit from Southwest 44th Street all the way to Northwest 30th Street. Use of a lower speed limit on these streets isn't indicated by current collision experience or by observed driver behavior. So at this point in time, we can recommend that the Commission consider changing the speed limit on Broadway from 30 to 35, and then changing the speed limits on Chartel and Robinson from 30 to 25 will be at the discretion of the Commission.
All right, do we have a motion concerning 5B?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move approval, but could we take Broadway separate first and then consider Chartel and Robinson together in a separate motion? Would that be okay with council?
Yes, you certainly can.
Then I'd like to start with recommending approval of North Broadway consistent with staff recommendation.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to approve item 5B, subparagraph 3. Do we, would staff, as staff recommended, or, yeah. And do we have a second on that?
A second.
Okay, and Mr. Miller. Okay, do we have any talk on this motion, on this item? I do. I just don't, when I come here, I always come down 23rd and then take that road and go around the firehouse. And 35 seems to be pretty fast around that firehouse circle. Would it be something acceptable just past the circle, or do you really want 35 in the circle, or would we want to just mark a caution, 25 mile an hour caution around the circle or something?
I'd have to defer to staff on that. You might put one of the curve notes gives you a speed limit at a curve, as opposed to.
Well, it's just very narrow when you're going south, coming off of 23rd. It's pretty narrow right there as you start into the circle, and then it's not too bad. But then on the other side, going north, you got that pizza place right there with some angle parking, and so a little bit more. Then it looks different than the rest of Broadway from the circle to 13th.
All right. Well, currently the prevailing 85th percentile speed limit on Broadway right now is running 37 miles an hour. So changing the speed limit from 30 to 35 still isn't reaching the 85th percentile. We can certainly post advisory speed plaques for the curves at either end of that park, that Broadway.
So you're saying that when you did the speed study, you not only did that wide open spot from just south of the circle to 13th, you also did the circle?
We did not do at the curve locations, but we can post supplemental advisory speed plaques.
Okay.
As drivers enter those.
Right, it just seems like that would be, does that sound okay? Ma'am? Well, of course, if I could have your name, address, you have up to 5 minutes, and make sure to fill out a form when you're done, please.
Thank you. I'm Jane Jenkins, 220 Northwest 19th Street. I have a question about 1 and 2 and the lowering of the
Ma'am,
speed.
we're not on 1 and 2 right now. We went ahead and pushed. We only have a motion right now for item 3.
Are you going to discuss 1
Yes,
and 2?
we are. Thank you. No, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, so in reference to 5B3, staff is just going to go ahead and put some cautionary signs. It has nothing to do with the motion or anything. Okay? That's all I was looking for. All right, any other talk on item 5B3? Okay, so we have, I'm sorry? Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Milner, to approve item 5B3. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, do we have a motion concerning, well, let's wait here. So, yeah, we have public comment. Prior to a motion, does anybody else here want to speak on item 5B, subparagraph 1 and 2? If I could have your name, address, you have up to 5 minutes to fill out a form,
Mr.
please.
Chairman, Jane Jenkins, 220 Northwest 19th Street. I actually just have a question for Stuart. I apologize, I came in late. And I just did not know if the new stop signs on Chartel and on Robinson in particular had done anything to naturally slow the speed limit on those two streets between 13th and 23rd?
I don't have the speed studies that were done previously. Just looking at the prevailing 85th percentile speeds, I would probably say not, because the traffic volumes between the time that we had studied this area last in April of 2017 and today's counts actually we showed a higher count versus the 2017 count. So I would have to presume that probably traffic speeds have probably remained fairly consistent.
Okay. As somebody like yourself that uses Robinson a great deal, I don't find a lot of traffic able to exceed 25 miles per hour on that street anymore because of the stop signs. That's, I think I see very few. Chartel, Mr. Schuline may see more action on that street than I do, but I live close to Robinson, and I think most of the traffic there is moving at about 25 anyway. So.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else wanted to speak on item? Yes, sir.
Just briefly, and in response to that, that's why we're asking for the speed limit to allow the enforcement of that as well. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Okay. Anybody else? 5B, subparagraphs 1 and 2. Okay. Staff, we need your input.
Okay. I've already reported on this particular item. The only thing I want to draw your attention to is on page 8 of your staff report. You'll notice under the next actions that with the reduction of the speed limits, if they're approved on Chartel and Robinson, there's school zone flashing signals, and the way their codes are structured, flashing signals are eligible on roads where the speed limit is posted greater than 25. Those will be removed and they'll be replaced with signs if this item's approved. And actually, we've got schools that are on the southwest side of the city that we need to get some flashing signals installed, so this will give us an opportunity to move them from Robinson and from Chartel and have them placed on, in this particular case, Southwest 15th and Southwest 44th Streets.
Okay. So do we have a motion concerning item 5B, subparagraphs 1 and 2?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. If it has been our policy to remove those signs, and I have a list of about 10 that can be removed on Walker and Chartel. Now, I just drove around before we came, and there are 4 on Chartel near Westminster, and 2 on Walker, and 2 on Western at Horace Mann, and 2 on 23rd. Is it a policy is that a new policy of us removing these flashing lights, or?
Though there may be locations that have been overlooked in the past, but I think it's just there is a strong interest from Mustang Public Schools to get some flashers up on on a couple arterial locations where they've got first-year schools that have opened up.
I personally would rather see the flashers stay up for the safety of the kids, and if making this change would disrupt what's currently happening, then I would not be in favor of changing the speed limits. I'd rather see the signs up because of the volume of traffic.
Well, there still would be signs. They wouldn't be flashers.
Flashing signs.
Okay. So we're looking for, well, that's a whole nother ordinance. I believe that's in the standards.
What I'm saying is, if we take action today and change the speed limit and were to lose those flashing signs, I would be opposed to doing that.
Okay.
Is that,
Okay, well then, I mean, let's just verify here with staff that that's something that would occur, because that's how I read it is, if it's above 25 and you're going to be changing the speed limit that has to be enforced, they use the flashers to tell everybody, hey, look, because we're going to be enforcing at 25. If it's already 25, then they have signage that just says, don't forget, this is now a school area, which if I understand right, has a fine implication. Speeding in a school zone is different than just speeding. So that's why there's no flashers, because it's just a reminder that, hey, now you're in here. That's how I understand it. Is that how it's written?
Yeah, and actually, if you look on page 9 of your staff report, there's a code section 32-170 that talks about location of school signs and warnings. Part B of that section reads that school speed limit signs with flashing warning signals shall be erected in advance of school zones where the posted speed limit is 30 miles per hour or more. So basically, on anything that's 30 or higher, we post warning flashers. And then the next section, Part C, says school speed limit signs bearing the legend, when children are present, shall be erected in advance of school sites in which the posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour or less, or at locations where flashers are not present or other acceptable control is in operation. So based on that, we would just ordinarily replace the warning flashers with just signs that read 25 miles an hour when children are present. That would be from an enforcement perspective, there would be increased fines associated with speeding in a school zone. But, by reducing the speed limit to 25, basically, these streets will run at a school zone speed limit speed on a permanent basis.
Question. The difference is, though, you change it, the school speed limit with the flashers are going to be more noticeable by the driver, and they're going to look at that flashing light, and they're, uh-oh, I know what I'm doing. And right now, based on your speed study, when you drop it to 25, how much did that drop the percentage point from the 85th percentile? It dropped down to 61. So you're going to be incumbent on those drivers. They're going to be thinking, I've been driving, I know I can drive 30, then all of a sudden I don't even have it. All of a sudden I'm going to get a ticket because I'm in a school zone. And I didn't, well, what happened to our flashers? Why did they take our flashers down? And then when I could have been, I would at least be, it's just better warning. The flasher, it's not worth it to reduce it 5 miles an hour and lose your flashers. It's my opinion.
But if I read this correctly, it's not mandatory that they go away.
Yeah, but it would set a precedent, right?
That's up to the staff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mandate that they have to go away.
Was the neighborhood aware that they were going to go away? Or there's a good possibility they're going away?
That's a good question.
And they're still in favor of it?
You know, Bill, this is the first I've seen this part of the ordinance.
Okay. The ordinance does say shall. It says school speed limits bearing the legend, when children are present, shall be erected, as Stuart mentioned. And then paragraph B also says shall. School speed limit signs with flashing warning signs shall be erected in advance of school zones when the posted speed limit is 30 miles per hour or more. So in both instances, it's shall.
Okay. What I was reading is on C is that it says speed limit is 25 hours more or less.
Shall be erected.
All right, so if I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Bill Carey. I live at 326 Northwest 16th Street. I'm president of the board of Heritage Hills and chairman of the traffic committee that put this thing together over the last few years. It's part of an overall plan for the 3 neighborhoods. And and we were not aware that those would be removed. The way I read the materials, they could be removed. But we would certainly would really request that you not remove them if it is optional, that we get the reduce the speed limits and leave the flashing school zones.
Okay, so the point is, if the staff has the authority to take a recommendation from us on our motion, do you feel you have the authority to just leave them there? Or do you think that you must move them?
Well, if there is a removal of the signs would be in accordance with the way our municipal codes are written. And this code, I'm sure, was probably authored years ago and is in recognition of basically equality of scale. You get to a point where, there are lots of locations, and I'm sure that most neighborhoods would probably appreciate having school zone flashers on, in zones where the speed limit's already 25. And I can certainly appreciate that, but you get to a point where, you don't have enough necessarily equipment to go around to cover all your needs. And like I mentioned earlier, we have 2 new schools that Mustang Public Schools have opened up, and right now they just have signs posted on either end of their zones that read speed limit 25 from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And I know that district has contacted us at least a couple times, and they're very interested in seeing that the warning flashers be installed. But at the moment, our traffic operations group does not have any equipment to move that to that location.
Well, and like was mentioned, there may be places in the city that you could go and get some, because there was a change in the speed limit and they were never pulled. Like he was talking about, there's 6 that he knows of that flashing lights could be pulled to help out the rest of the city. So I guess what we're saying here is, if we go down to 25, then there is a better place that could use those lights. Because if it's a 40 mile an hour and they don't have the lights right now and they just don't have the funding, so we need to take the lights and we need to move on. I mean, that's just a pretty simple, basic 25 and below. You just need a sign to just tell everybody, hey, don't forget there's a school around. Whereas it's 30 and above, especially if there's places in the city that need it, that's their job to go ahead and rotate those assets as the city needs. Yes, sir. You have a comment?
I just need to double check. Counselor, did I understand correct that the way you read it, it is not an option that they would have to come out?
The bottom part, as Mr. Johnson was pointing out earlier, the bottom part says, excuse me, where flashers are not present and other acceptable control is in operation. So the whole thing is saying that you have to put the signs in, shall be erected, in advance of school sites in which the posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour or less, or at locations where flashers are not present and other acceptable control is in operation. So it could be acceptable if it was the sign that was mentioned, or it could be acceptable if it's the flasher that was mentioned. But staff would have to determine what would be appropriate, and the ordinance allows staff that discretion.
Excuse me, I would like to point out that we do have over 200 kids that walk to school every day, going to Wilson and to Classen, across Classen. We also have a tremendous amount of just casual pedestrian traffic, whether it be baby strollers, bicycles, and now the little scooters. So that's what our reduction in these limits is aimed at. But we would certainly like to work with staff to keep the flashing schools.
Well, let me ask council, just to make sure that I have it clear. If we made a motion and if we said go down to 25, and if we said but we would want those flashers to stay there, is that a valid motion and action on the Traffic Commission's point, or would it be just a recommendation of staff to please keep them there if that's in the best interest of the city?
I think it would be up to staff to determine whether or not other acceptable control is in operation.
So we could only make a recommendation in our motion.
You could recommend that staff look into it.
Right.
See if there is an acceptable control that is available.
But you don't think we
Other
could...
than the
we could-
flashing light?
We could dictate that they stay up.
No, I think staff would need to look into it to find out, because the requirement is for acceptable control.
Right, I understand.
And that could be
ma'am.
anything, so.
Okay. Comment?
If there's a possibility, a strong possibility that the flashers would come down, then I would oppose the change of speed limit. I had rather either table this or turn it down, disapprove it, or...
Okay. Well, we're at a point where we need a motion. So do you want to make a motion, or want to let Mr. Schuline?
I thought we already had a motion. Don't we have a motion? To approve the...
No, we don't have a motion on 1 and 2.
My motion is to approve items 1 and 2 of this agenda item,
Okay?
as recommended by the applicant.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to approve item 5B, 1 and 2, and do we have a second on this?
I can second that with
Okay, well,
the
let
note.
me get a second.
I
No.
mean, so it has to include the note that the flashers stay up, or that some...
That we ask the staff.
What would the, I've got a question about that. What would the total value of those flashers be for the 2 school zones? I mean, how much money is that? And if a neighborhood was to do a fundraiser and pay for those, can they do that? And what would that number be for them to keep those and pay for them themselves?
Probably a typical individual flasher would probably be upwards of about $3,000 per installation.
Per flasher.
Per flasher.
So there's 2 on
6
one
per,
on each side.
yeah, 6,000 per school zone.
But that's with labor and everything, so just the material
Right,
itself is probably
yeah.
half that, maybe?
Well, it's not so much labor. That would be because, a flasher typically involves building a concrete footing, and then there's a breakaway base, the post, and then the flashers that we use currently are tied to like a master system which sends out annual programming, because our flashers will run basically an annual clock, and it will include all the scheduled days off that each district has, and it also allows the flashing schedules to be tailored to meet the needs of each particular school, because there are practically no 2 schools that do it the same way. They're all different.
Okay, so let's go back to the motion before we go for a second. Did I hear that your motion wants to be from Commissioner Schuline to approve item 5B, 1 and 2, with a recommendation to staff that if it is in the best interest of that location, to keep the flashers? Okay? And we have a second by Commissioner George. Do we have any other talk on this item? Yes, sir.
Tim, get this back up. If I don't touch it, it closes off on me. We go way back talking about the traffic calming in Heritage Hills, like decades. Do the speed limit reductions on Robinson and Chartel, were they a part of the original discussion way back then, or was this something that's come about sooner rather than?
No, it was part of the original overall study and plan that was put together by TEC. And I think the last 2 remaining items on that list include some additional stop signs in lieu of yield signs on Chartel, which the staff has an application from us on that. And then the very last is to change the direction on Robinson by the church from 1-way to 2-way.
So the last application that we had a year or 2 ago that was the huge inventory of stop signs, this was another element with these speed limits, and then this handful of stop signs that we're also discussing. And I'm not 100% certain, so this is going to be a question instead of a statement. Wouldn't it be reasonable to say that on both Chartel and Robinson, most of the properties don't face those streets. The fronts of those properties face the east-west streets. These are mostly sides of properties.
On Robinson, that's accurate. On Chartel, there's quite a few more converted. There's multifamily on Chartel through the Master Park area, and then there's been drives added to garage apartments and things like that over the years. So there's quite a few more drives in and out of Chartel.
Drives, but the fronts of the properties don't necessarily.
Some of them do.
Some do. Okay. It seems to me like it's getting to be a pretty vast area of 25-mile-an-hour speed limits. So I'm not for or against it anyway. I'm trying to make a decision here. It would seem to me that the neighborhood would even appreciate having at least one street that bisects it where they can get in and out a little more easily.
I think the plan, as it was accepted by both neighborhoods, was to protect this unique urban setting of uniform block streets and to drive the through traffic to the perimeter, being Classen, Western, and Broadway. And so that's how this was all approached. That was how the original approval signatures from the neighborhood was all approached as a one big project.
Thank you.
Yep.
Question. Also, in the original TEC study, wasn't there some signals supposed to have been removed on 13th Street?
Yes.
That never happened?
No, not yet.
What were they? Would that be something we'd look at also?
The way that the original request that came in was so broad and expansive, and there are so many moving components to it. There was a decision made at Public Works to start with the interior components, which are the stop controls, and then this is just the most recent request. Like I said, if you looked at the letter that Mr. Johnson submitted, there was a series of, I believe 8 more stop locations or conversions of some of the intersections, and then these 3 streets having their speed limits adjusted. So I imagine there'll be a further application yet if they decide to pursue the, removing some traffic signals along 13th Street. I think there were 3 locations, at least 2, for sure.
On 13th, not the neighborhood, but to get people out of it. That was to keep them from coming in. I mean, that was to let the flow make it a little harder.
That was the thought, yes.
That was the thought. That never occurred, though.
Hasn't yet.
Okay, yes, sir, you have more?
Given the work that this neighborhood did for so long, so many years, on traffic calming, I'm not opposed to reducing these speed limits, but I also have a very real concern about the schools. I'm wondering if it might not be a good idea, before we jump into this, to set back for 30 days and see if we can ensure this neighborhood that they get to keep those signals at those schools.
Well, let me just ask the neighborhood, is that a drop-dead kind of thing, that if you were to lose the signal, those flashing lights, that you would try to have 30 miles an hour? I mean, if it's a drop-dead.
We'd be okay deferring this a month, given the neighborhood an opportunity to talk to staff about any assurances we can have keeping those signs.
Okay, staff? That sounds okay.
I was about to say, I'll do whatever the commission determines to be the most appropriate course of action. I just want to throw in one other thing, though, is that the one school that there is in this neighborhood, Wilson Elementary, does have always stops around every corner on it. So, and that was part of the changes that were done previously when the commission considered a number of always stop requests for this neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if we postpone this 30 days, can staff get more information if there are other flashers within that neighborhood that could be?
Well, it's not that neighborhood, it's in other neighborhoods where the speed limits might have changed, and it's 25, but yet there's flashers.
Okay.
So it's other neighborhoods where he can
But we
get.
do know. But then I still kind of have a little bit of a problem too, because then we're going to another neighborhood where they've had them and they're used to it, and we're lifting them out of that neighborhood to.
Well, again, if the staff needs them as a resource for a 40-mile-an-hour
They could have
place,
anyways, at any time. Is that how I understand
well,
it?
it appears that that the staff may not have known that there was others.
Okay.
So that's a good point.
And so we need to look at. But I feel like it would be the same situation for what's happening
Oh, yours, yeah.
at Heritage Hills, though, where we're sitting here. I'm stuck on this one because we're voting to try to give them the best of both worlds, where we lower the speed limit and when they keep the flashers, and we're finding out that if we lower the speed limit, that we might have to move those flashers to a school district that really needs them. I don't know what more information we can get on that, but can we get that information?
Well, and I think
Help
that's
us
what
make
they're
this decision.
talking about, is the staff's going to have to look to see what's out there as other reasons.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying, just as a common concern, if there are 5 other school districts or schools out there that have had flashers for 10 years at 25 mile an hour, they've grown used to that, even though they're supposed to do 25 anyway.
Yeah.
And then if we just all of a sudden show up and take them away,
Yeah.
what's going to be their comments, and is that a concern to the citizenship? And that's what you're voicing. Am I right, sir?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to make it even more difficult than it is.
Well,
but
let's do it.
That's okay. I feel like it's going to be the same deal, and
Just with a
then I
different
kind
school.
of feel like if that's going to be the case, then
But we do that, and I say we, the city does that on many things.
Sure.
That we have the rules, and we have limited resources, and we put the resources where they need to be. And if something has to be done somewhere, it
Absolutely.
just has to get done.
absolutely.
And what's the safest and what's best for the entire citizenship.
Absolutely.
And that's why he gets paid all those big bucks.
Okay, thank you.
So the question is, if we defer a month, this would give him time to look at the rules. Counselor could look harder on it. The staff could look harder on it. What are the rules? What does the neighborhood really want? And then it can come back, and we'll have a little bit more answers. Is that kind of what we're thinking about? Is that kind of what you? Oh, we have another comment.
I think what I'm taking from this is the neighborhood came forward and they weren't aware that these lights would be removed. The possibility is great if they would be removed. I think it's fair that the neighborhood have time to go back and visit about that possibility and get your thoughts on it.
Right, and that's what we're talking about. And the staff to relook at the whole thing and compare it to other neighborhoods and other requirements that he has to fill. Okay, so let's go over here. You have your button pushed. Do you still want to talk? You ready? Okay, no, now.
Okay, and we're talking about Chartel, which is 3 or 4 blocks west of Wilson. I mean, it is not like it's only a half a block on these flashing lights. I'm all for the flashing lights. I think we need to have as much protection for our children as possible, absolutely. But this is really not like it's adjacent to the school. I mean, it is 3 blocks west. So I really think we're kind of overdoing it on these flashing lights on Chartel. I mean, that's just my opinion. I really think the neighborhood really would prefer consistency with all the streets throughout the neighborhood. Even on 23rd, the speed limit is 25. When you turn onto Chartel, do you expect it to increase to 30? I don't think so. I think that the neighborhood would prefer consistency over arguing over these flashing lights, which are 3 blocks west of Wilson. But that's just my opinion.
The 2 problems I have, first off, are the flashing lights, the possibility of giving those up. But the other is I don't want to see the same result on these 2 streets like we've seen on 23rd Street when we reduced the speed limit and it actually went up from what it was prior to the change.
Okay, anybody else have some comments? And we're going to go back to the motioner here. Okay, so any modifications to your motion? Right now, the motion is from Commissioner Schuline, second by Commissioner George, that we approve items 1 and 2 and make a comment that the staff consider keeping the flashes there if it is in the best interest of the city. That's the current motion and the current second. Am I right, sir? Is that the current motion and second? Okay. Do you have any comment to that motion? Okay. Does the motion...
I think the waiting for the neighborhood to understand that there's at least a 50% chance those flashing lights are going away, it sounds like to me. So they decide that that's fine with them, and if it's fared out that not having flashing at 25 is statistically just as safe as having flashing at 25, and I would assume there's hundreds of studies that have been done on that, and I'm fine with that. That's what the city recommends, taking out the flashing. But I would like the neighborhood to have that opportunity to understand and to decide, yeah, we're fine with taking out those flashing lights. So I would, I guess, rescind my second, because I think the vote's going negative if we vote on it. So I would suggest a 30-day.
Sir, do you have a comment?
Yeah, as mentioned, we're willing to defer 30 days, so.
Okay, so we go back to the motioner.
I'll withdraw my motion, or
Okay, so the motion has been pulled.
defer till next month, if that's
And
a
so
motion.
we have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to defer item 5B, subpoints 1 and 2, to next month. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner George. Any discussion on this? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to defer items 5B, 1 and 2 to next meeting, second by Commissioner George. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is moved. Okay, we go on now to item 5C, Timothy Johnson, P.E., Johnson Associates, to consider a request to remove the reserved parking space for the physically disabled on the west side of South Mickey Mantle Drive from approximately 340 feet south to 485 feet south of the south curb line of East Sheraton Avenue. 2, establish a reserved parking space for the physically disabled on the west side of South Mickey Mantle Drive from approximately 30 feet south to 55 feet south of the south curb line of Wanda Jackson Way. 3, remove the open carriage stand on the east side of South Mickey Mantle Drive from approximately 325 feet north to 385 feet north of the north curb line of East Reno Avenue. 4, establish an open carriage stand on the east side of South Mickey Mantle Drive from approximately 268 feet north to 328 feet north of the north curb line of East Reno Avenue. And 5, establish a 40-foot wide mid-block pedestrian crossing on South Mickey Mantle Drive from approximately 348 feet north to 388 feet north of the north curb line of East Reno Avenue. Mr. Johnson, you got 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Sorry that last item was so difficult. I appreciate your patience on that. This item hopefully won't be as difficult, although it's a very long introduction to the item. But basically, the bottom line is Downtown Oklahoma City Partners have been working with the city and our office to gain a mid-block crossing that would increase safety for pedestrians that cross from the plaza at Mickey Mantle Ballpark over to the canal main entrance. And it's in conjunction with some artwork that will be installed on the sidewalk there as well. And that artwork is intended to really enunciate the opening or the entry into the canal, which was deleted as an alternate when it was originally bid 20 years ago. So it's only taken 20 years to get the entry listed. Anyway, so to do all that, you had to read all the changes that we have proposed. And just very briefly, these colored stripes are paid parking, no parking zones, 15-minute parking, carriage staging, valet is in blue, and taxi is in yellow. So this is what's there today. So you can see it's quite a mixture of uses along Mickey Mantle. The only parking, paid parking, is the orange over on the north side of the alleyway. What we're proposing is, in an effort to, and we worked with the police department, in an effort to try not to take away any uses, we've come up with the major issue is moving the current ADA parking space. The only one on the block is right in the middle of the canal entryway. So we've asked to move it over here. That's probably the major item. The valet remained the same. Taxi lost one space. And then we connected the carriage and 15-minute parking zone to be a dual use for that length. So obviously the carriage guys don't operate during the day on work days, only on the weekends. So we feel like this is the best compromise and are proposing that. The mid-block crossing, so the canal is up here, the ballpark's down here. It's fairly straightforward. We're adding 2 bump outs to minimize the width of crossing. We're creating a very wide sidewalk that'll have continental striping and charcoal gray concrete. So to create a difference in the street material, because that street's all brick. And it'll help point out the fact that, hey, there's a crosswalk here. We are also including flashing lights that'll be actuated by a pedestrian button. So if I walk up here and want to cross, I can push the button, the lights start flashing, and hopefully the cars will stop. The new plaza area gets all new concrete, and these black pieces are the artwork that will be going in there. In lieu of bollards, we are putting very large planter vases that can have some plant growth in them. And this whole width becomes ADA accessible all the way across the crosswalk. So we thank Downtown OKC Partners, also thank, and as well as the businesses in the area have all worked together on this. We have Mr. Chad Huntington is here in support, as well as DOKC. At one point in time, we had a set of plans that everybody that touched this had signed their approval on it. So we've been going around the block on this quite a few times, and we're glad that it's here, and we're anxious to get it built. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to talk on item 5C? Yes, ma'am. We already have your information. You have up to 5 minutes.
I'm Jane Jenkins, and I'm the president of the Downtown OKC Partnership. And this has been a project in the works for about 2 years as we work to find a way and a system that we could get this mid-block crossing on Mickey Mantle that would be safe for pedestrians, accessible to traffic, accommodating taxis, valet zones, carriage rides, the ballpark, and many other uses. But the fact is that people cross there anyway. It's just a natural place because it's the end of the canal. They come up from the canal. They don't walk to the corner. They cross over there to get to the plaza. So this was all born a part of a larger pedestrian safety plan for Bricktown that hopefully in the next couple of years we'll get more elements to you that will increase the pedestrian safety in Bricktown. And I'd like to thank Tim Johnson and his team for working with us, the businesses in Bricktown for really staying vigilant and getting involved in this and weighing in on it, and Stuart for his time to review and offer comments to make this thing work. So I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. If you come up and have your name, address, you have up to 5 minutes, and please fill out a form when you're done. Okay, good. Thank you.
My name is David Little. My address is 14 East Main here in Oklahoma City. I appreciate the time that you have. Captain Neal, how are you? What the gentleman said, that he thought that this was a good compromise for everybody. Last Thursday evening was the first that I even knew that there was anything that was happening. I own the oldest established horse and carriage business in Oklahoma City, and have been at the Mickey Mantle Plaza of the ballpark for the last 15 years. Unlike the woman also said that it would be a great place for a crosswalk, and it is, because people actually cross the street that entire block, and it's a lot of times it's dangerous. Once again, I think the crosswalk is a good idea. I'm okay with the crosswalk. That moves my carriage station 80 feet to the south on your map there. Gives me a total of 60 feet total for that, and actually puts me at more of a disadvantage on the block as far as that goes because of the openness of the stand. Underneath, the proposal is to move it back 60 feet to the area there underneath those trees. It's where he's talking about. And really, I don't have a problem with that, other than the fact that it takes away a lot of the visibility. If you would do a good thing, really, and post the the signs a little better, the signs that have differentiated the carriage stations are, as far as I can concerned, are way too tall. People don't see those. They don't recognize them. I pay or minimum of $1,800 a year for licenses, permits, and everything else. And I'm not a tough guy to get along with, but I'm always having to ask Uber drivers, people doing drop-offs at the ballpark and everything, to please make their drop-off and keep moving. I mean, we've had people that have parked there for hours at a time when we're trying to conduct business. We appreciate the fact that Oklahoma City still embraces and hopefully will continue to embrace the carriages. We get told every year, every day that, you know, what a nice deal that it is. We see people from all over the country, if not all over the world, and I can give you examples of those. But what I would like if there was, and I know I'm not in a quid pro quo situation because I don't have a whole lot to offer, but if there was a way to extend the stand once again, I'd like, you know, if 20 feet would help me a little bit and get out a little more visibility, that would sure be appreciated. To just add 20 feet, make it instead of a 60-foot span, make it 80 feet. That still gives a lot of people drop-offs from behind for the ticket windows at the ballpark, and I think that if you could help out anywhere like that. The one thing that not on your agenda, if I could just throw this out there, the left-hand turn arrow from Reno on to Mickey Mantle Street is a fantastic idea. It's been on a couple of times in the last couple of months, and then it doesn't operate like that any longer. You see where I'm saying? It's from Mickey Mantle, or from Reno on the Mickey Mantle, the left-hand turn arrow right there helps to clear the traffic out of there.
And you're saying it's not working properly?
I'm sorry?
You're saying it's not working properly?
It's not working at all.
That left turn arrow, if you could put in a work request.
The one began to work at Oklahoma and Reno, and where it has the newer flashing yellow, which helps out quite a lot. But there's not a left-hand arrow from Reno to Mickey Mantle.
There's not, or it's not working?
I can't tell you whether there's one or there or not. There used to be one there. There used to be operational, but it has stopped.
So there is one there. So there's supposed to be one
in the past. I don't know if there's supposed to be one there or not.
Okay.
Months ago there was one that operated, and then it stopped working. Just something to throw out. Once again,
staff will go out there and look to make sure if it fills. Okay, so I understand you're okay with the mid-block crossing.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Yeah. You made a comment, and I might have misunderstood you. You said that currently you have 80 feet for your stand.
Currently there's 60 feet.
60 feet.
Been proposed.
And we're moving, and we're giving you 60 feet again.
Exactly.
And what you're saying is the original 60 was even too small, and seeing as we're moving it, why not move up to 80?
That'd be
what you're
great.
asking.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you're asking, okay?
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go to staff, Mr. Johnson, is there any room to do something like that right there, you think?
Well, I think it gets into the 15-minute no parking area, but I think that we had discussed with staff and then as part of our application that those could overlap and function, but
Actually, the way our codes are structured, 32409 prohibits parking within a taxi within a carriage stand. So in order to accommodate this proposed crossing and to accommodate relocating that carriage stand, what we've done is we've cut the usable length out of the current 15-minute parking zone. Currently, it measures around 153 feet long. With the change we've got proposed as a result, to accommodate the mid-block crossing, it's going to reduce from 153 feet to 96 feet. So what Mr. Little was requesting is that that the 15-minute parking zone will ultimately be 76 feet in length, from basically about half of what it is currently.
And it sounds like it's fair to the ballpark, but they have 60 feet now, the carriages. So the ballpark is giving up their 15-minute parking for ticket buyers. So it's
Right.
really
Well, making it smaller is what we're saying.
not
right?
giving it up, but reducing in length.
Right, and of course,
So-
they aren't here to provide their comment on that.
Right.
I understand. Yes, sir, did you have another comment before we? No, that's fine, just come up to the microphone, please.
And while the 15-minute parking sounds like a fantastic idea, 15-minute parking there along that street turns into 2-hour parking for free. The Bricktown Police have in the past have issued citations and for that, for the violations, but we see so much of that into where that 15-minute parking isn't 15-minute parking. You just as well set meters and meter parking because you're getting 2- and 3-hour parks there all the time.
Right, and as we said, that's meant for pull up, run up to the box office, get something, and pull back in your car. That's what we think that's 15 minutes for. Yes, ma'am, please.
I'd just like to say that Downtown OKC is working with Embark and their parking agency, Corey Huber, and we're going to be doing an evaluation of all the on-street parking downtown, including Bricktown. In other words, where the loading zones are, where the carriage areas are, where the handicap parking is, where the 15-minute parking is, and see if we can come up with a more global plan for uses in areas. So just know that that's coming. It will take us a while to do it, but the loss of that parking, including maybe adding an Uber stop or a Lyft stop, since that's what's happening there, trying to accommodate all the new technologies that affect pedestrian districts like Bricktown. Thanks.
Very good input. Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir, would you like to come up and speak? Name and address, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I just want to add a note on the Uber and Lyft. Uber and Lyft, do what now?
Rank thing. Rank. In your
Master Art Bells, Oklahoma City Police Department, I'm sorry. On the Uber and Lyft, under state law, they cannot sit on stands. They have to be mobile. That is a state misdemeanor charge. They can go to jail for that. Just adding that note.
Right, very good. Thanks for the update. Okay, anybody else want to speak on item 5C? Okay, staff?
All right, you've got our comments before you. As proposed, the mid-block crossing location will displace one reserved parking space for the physically disabled, as it's proposed in this item to be relocated further to the south to remain on the west side of Mickey Mantle Drive and just be south of Wanda Jackson Way. That covers parts 1 and 2 of your request. 3 and 4 address the relocation of the existing 60-foot open carriage stand will be displaced by the crossing on the east side of Mickey Mantle. There are 2 60-foot zones or carriage loadings, open carriage stands on Mickey Mantle currently. So by relocating this further to the south, we'll be maintaining that which has been there since, I think, about 99 is when the carriage stands were originally approved. And the only significant changes that will occur as a result of these, on the west side where the accessible parking space goes in south of Wanda Jackson Way, that will reduce an open taxi stand somewhat. And on the east side, like I said, I'd mentioned earlier, the length of that 15-minute, basically temporary time-limited parking zone on the east side will be reduced from about 153 feet to 96 feet. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have regarding this item.
Okay. Do we have a motion concerning item 5C?
I make a motion to approve the items as presented and also with the staff's recommendations.
Okay. We have a motion from Commissioner Miller to approve item 5C, including staff recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner George. Any discussion on item 5C? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Mr. Johnson. Awesome plan. But I've got one question about the 88 space. Is there not, I guess it would be on the north side of the canal side of the crosswalk, isn't that a ADA approved elevator there? I think there is.
There's an elevator on the the north side of the canal, right in front of Mickey Mouse Restaurant.
And I guess to put that ADA space over there in that valet area right by that elevator, it'd take more work with changing that ordinance, wouldn't it?
It would have to change the valet ordinance, as
Right.
well as we'd have to do construction on the sidewalk to make it work there. The location we've selected was reviewed by Oklahoma City's ADA specialists and approved this location based on the curb drop that's already there at the alley.
So the proposed location, I can't recall and I can't tell from this aerial, but that's all ramp down. Is it accessible by ramp to get down into the canal on the?
Not in that location. You have to take the elevator.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other talk on item 5C? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5C from Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner George, to include staff recommendation. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. I do have one thing. He did mention about the height of the signs. So when you move the signs, could you make sure that they're the proper height of whatever they're supposed to be?
Well, proper height is dictated by the manual and uniform traffic control devices, and we're constrained to about 7 foot of ground clearance.
Correct.
Just so people can pass underneath the sign without risk of injury, unless you play for the Thunder.
Well, if you could just make sure it's at the correct one. Maybe,
Yes.
Maybe the ones
Yeah, we will.
that are too high or
Yeah,
something.
we don't really have the options to do very much in the way of lowering, because on those signs, there's a lot that's being asked of each one of these particular sign locations, like 15-minute parking, the carriage stand, and then the supplemental sign that echoes code, which says that a carriage stand can be used also for taxi purposes between certain hours.
Right. I would just want to make sure that whatever height we do it in, whatever's authorized, is the correct height, that it's not too high. Okay, good. Ma'am, did you have a comment?
I wanted to thank the commission, but I had one more comment I wanted to make, and that is, it just didn't come up, but Downtown OKC Partnership and the Bricktown businesses and the Bricktown Association are paying 50% of the cost of installing this mid-block crossing. And so I don't know why that didn't come up, but it is a partnership with the city to get this thing done, and so the private sector is paying their share to make it happen.
All right. Well, that rolls us right into item 6, comments from citizens. And so, is there anybody out there that want to talk? Yes, sir. If I could have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes. And I think we already have a form on you, sir.
Okay, my name is Chad Huntington. My business address is 116 East Sheridan, Suite 103, Bricktown. I am the general manager of Water Taxi on the Bricktown Canal, and first of all, thank you for the vote that you just made. This is something that we've been involved with and are very excited about. I have been in Bricktown as general manager since 2002 of Water Taxi, and I get to see a lot of days and times when people interact with the district outside of normal business hours. We're very excited about the streetcar construction. We've been watching that as testing has happened. My office is in the building that's directly across from TapWorks on Sheridan, and we've noticed some potential bottlenecks and some things that we believe may negatively impact streetcar service, and also something that was probably driven by the streetcar, which is some striping and the addition, I believe, of left turn signal at Oklahoma Avenue, which I very much support, and I think that was excellent. But I wanted to speak to those two locations briefly and ask if it's possible that there's already a plan in place. I've talked to several partners. I've talked to OCPD, not talked to Mr. Rush. I've talked to Downtown Oklahoma City Partnership and the communications liaison from ADG, and nobody is entirely clear on whether or not there are plans to address the items that I'm going to ask about just real quick. The first item would be on Sheridan at Mickey Mantle, and there is an issue right now related to the eastbound traffic at Sheridan and Mickey Mantle. especially during busy times in Bricktown, read evenings, when people will be trying to turn left to go up the bridge, up the Walnut Street Bridge. So what is happening is that multiple cars are stacking behind that, because that is one lane. It's a single lane. The streetcar also shares that lane, and in fact, it's right by a streetcar stop, which we're very excited about. But the traffic stacks, and during busy times, you might see 3 signal cycles where traffic is unable to move through that intersection, and it is just because 1 or 2 cars trying to turn left. The good news is that the other side of the street, the westbound, has 2 collector lanes that really don't seem to serve a purpose. Because if you go across Mickey Mantle and you look at Sheridan, you have a single lane that is a feeder lane into those 2 collector lanes, and then you also have a left turn lane which takes you south on Mickey Mantle. This may already be part of the plan, but I feel very strongly after watching it on multiple occasions, getting video and et cetera, that a very easy fix would be to sacrifice a portion of that westbound lane on Sheridan and make that a turn lane, left turn lane, to go up Walnut Street Bridge. And that way then traffic would be able to stack eastbound and turning up the Walnut Street Bridge, and other traffic would be free-flowing, including the streetcar, which I believe this is critically important for the streetcar to function as smoothly and as efficiently as possible, especially on busy nights, or I have concerns that the streetcar will have difficulty in retaining an audience. So I would urge that that be looked at as a way to mitigate that problem. The other problem that I've seen with through observation, and this happens at all times of day and night, is that the addition of the left turn lane on Oklahoma Avenue, going northbound on Oklahoma, has now caused a problem where, first of all, I don't believe probably there are enough left turn arrows that were added. At that time, there were 2 left turn arrows, and it's a very long run-up. And when I've looked at other recent road projects, for instance, Western Avenue, what had been done there, and what's been done in other locations related to streetcar and other downtown districts, there typically are 3 and 4 arrows directing people into the left turn lane. Right now there's 2, and they are right up by the light. So what's happening is cars who are also, by the way, trained that there are 2 lanes right there going east, despite the fact that it has always been a single collector lane, really. So in the past, before this happened, people were racing to get one in front of each other, and that was a real problem. Well, now there is a situation where people who are in the eastbound lane that becomes a left turn onto Oklahoma, they don't even understand that it's a left turn lane. They are not aware of it. And you can stand on that corner. I've done this myself. I did video, probably took video for 20 minutes one day, and this is no exaggeration, 9 of the 10 cars who approached that intersection didn't use the left turn lane correctly. They either went through it completely, or at the very end they dove over to the right. And it's a very unsafe situation. Of course, we're very pedestrian intensive right there, and that's important. Now, there is a sign that says that it's left turn only. The left lane is left turn only. In my experience, people don't really read signs, and I feel like it should be a little bit more intuitive. So my suggestion there, and I'm certainly no traffic engineer, but I would appreciate if staff or someone could come out and take a look at that and consider these suggestions, is that as soon as somebody comes under BNSF eastbound from Gaylord, that they be directed over to the right, or to the single lane that's also shared with the streetcar. And I understand that the streetcar would be impacted potentially by that, and that is something that would have to be looked at. But that the traffic be pushed over into that right lane, and then again there be a left turn lane that someone would literally have to take an action to get into that left turn lane, because I feel like at that point it's very obvious that it's a left turn lane. The other thing that I think would make it much more intuitive is that the striping on the other side of the intersection was never touched. So that has double yellow stripes that visually lead to the double yellow stripes in the left turn lane now. So if you're in that left turn lane lined up, visually it looks like you were to proceed forward. It's just intuitive. It makes you want to drive forward. So what I'm seeing there on a regular basis is two cars going forward on the green light at the same time. Possibly also a left turn arrow would help. But I think that what we're talking about would be very minimal. It's striping. I think that you could probably block out, have a return with the marks that I see elsewhere in the city, have a return on that double yellow with yellow marks, crosshatch, that would make it visually known to a driver sitting across from there that I'm not supposed to go into that lane. And I think that those minor changes and tweaks would solve that problem and possibly get ahead of some issues that the streetcar will be experiencing, and I'm sure will be experiencing. I know they're not doing evening testing yet, but I think when they do evening testing, it's going to be a gridlock.
Okay, great. Hold on one second. Staff, do you have any comment or questions?
No, well, we can take a look at it, but we'll also talk with the project management team for the streetcar project.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else wanting to speak? Comments from the citizens? Yes, sir. Please, come on up. We already have your information.
I'll just kind of add to that. So we have kind of noticed as we're doing training, eastbound Sheridan, kind of similar to what the sir was saying, we are seeing cars come up to that turn lane and then proceed eastbound. So one thing to note that it looks like they haven't painted the two left-hand arrows yet. So we actually have a construction meeting to talk about that tomorrow. So all of the striping isn't quite complete there. And then also I believe the no left-hand turn sign is actually on the pole. So if the streetcar is at the light, you can't actually see the sign. It's hidden by the streetcar. So we're going to look at maybe possibly moving that over to the mast arm or something. Obviously, we talked to Stuart about that. And also, you know, as we start training and running the streetcars around the loop, there's certain areas where we understand that there's probably going to be additional striping that needs to happen. And so we'll probably end up bringing an additional striping package to Stuart to take a look at and see what we can do there.
All right, very good. Thank you for the input. All right, anybody else wanting to speak? Comments from citizens? Okay, we'll go ahead and go to reports and other items. We'll go through the commissioners. Go to Commissioner Littlefield.
This for Stuart, from a citizen a couple of days ago. Harding Fine Arts School is at 3333 Northwest 33rd. And Northwest 33rd between Ollie and Chartel there's parking on both sides of that street, and it's like virtually one lane. And people are trying to get in from both directions. It's an absolute cluster mess. And I drove over there the other day, and on 33rd near Chartel, I saw the remnants of one no parking anytime sign on the school boundary, and I also saw one on the southern corner of Chartel at, what would that be, 32nd. So my thought is maybe that is no parking anytime all the way around the perimeter of the school. And if that's the case, the signs are missing, and that might resolve the issue for the citizens concerned. And that's all that's on my mind.
Okay, we'll have the location checked.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, over to Commissioner Hale.
Nothing to report, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Nothing, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
Nothing, sir.
Commissioner George.
I just had a quick question for Stuart. The elevator was brought up earlier, get down to the canal level. There's an elevator on the south side of the canal at California that I don't believe has been working for a year or two. And I'm not sure you can get down to the south side of the canal right now.
Is this the one that's-
there's a ramp. I don't know that there's a ramp down there either.
Is this the elevator over off of Oklahoma Avenue?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, I guess that's probably not us, but if it is, I don't know if we can have somebody take a look. I think they're trying to figure out how to build a ramp down there instead of fixing the elevator, but the elevator's in place. I'm not sure why it wouldn't be repaired. FYI.
I'll see if I can get some information for you.
Thank you.
Very good. Here it comes.
That elevator, I was waiting for Chad to come up here. That elevator is all part of a TIF, part of improvements in Bricktown that the city and Brett Bryant are addressing. Stuart can follow up on it. And so I don't know about that specific one, but I know that all the elevators are being addressed in terms of their usefulness, their cost of maintenance, and how we continue to make the canal handicapped accessible in a better way.
Okay, very good. Over to Commissioner Milner. Would you have anything? Nothing? Okay. Captain?
I have nothing.
Okay. Counselor? We good?
Nothing.
All right. Staff?
And outside of our ordinarily monthly report regarding administratively installed yield and parking controls, I have nothing further to add.
Okay. Is there any other business for the Traffic Commission? All right, stand adjourned.